A farm woman finds a duke left for dead, and their lives change forever. Part 1. The cold hit Clara Whitmore's face like a slap as she trudged back from the north field, her boots sinking into the frozen mud with every step. January in Yorkshire was brutal, the kind of cold that made your bones ache and your lungs burn. She'd been up since before dawn, mending fences, feeding the livestock, hauling water from the well that kept threatening to freeze over. Her hands were raw, her back screamed, and the sun was already dipping toward the horizon. 26 years old, and she felt 50. That's what widowhood did to a woman. Aged her, hardened her, made her invisible. The village women whispered about her. Poor Clara. Living alone. Unnatural. Dangerous even. But she preferred dangerous to the alternative, which was remarrying some local farmer who'd work her twice as hard and expect gratitude for it. She was passing the bend in the road that cut through her property when she saw him. At first, she thought it was a pile of discarded clothes, maybe a dead animal, but then she saw the hand, pale against the dark mud, fingers curled like he was reaching for something. Clara stopped. Every instinct told her to keep walking. A man, alone, injured. Nothing good could come from getting involved, but her feet wouldn't move. She stepped closer. He was young, maybe 30, with dark hair matted with blood and mud. His coat was torn but expensive. She could tell quality even through the filth. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, his breathing shallow and ragged. "Christ," she muttered, kneeling beside him. His pulse was weak but steady. He was alive, barely. She should go for help. But help was 2 miles away in the village, and by the time she got back, he'd be dead. Clara looked at the sky. The light was fading fast. She made a decision she'd probably regret. Getting him to the house nearly killed her. He was dead weight, tall and solid, and she had to drag him through the mud, her muscles screaming in protest. By the time she got him through the door, she was shaking with exhaustion. She laid him on the floor by the fire, stripped off his soaking clothes without ceremony — modesty was a luxury she couldn't afford — and wrapped him in every blanket she owned. His body was a map of violence. Deep bruises bloomed across his ribs. A gash on his shoulder still oozed blood. His knuckles were split like he'd fought back. Someone had tried very hard to kill this man. Clara worked through the night. She cleaned the wounds, stitched the worst of them with steady hands that had sewn more torn flesh than she cared to remember. She brewed willow bark tea for the fever that was already setting in, forced it between his lips, drop by drop. He muttered in his delirium, words she couldn't make out, names she didn't recognize. Once he grabbed her wrist so hard she gasped, his eyes rolling back, his voice desperate. "Edward, don't trust." Then he was gone again, lost in whatever nightmare held him. By dawn she was exhausted. She sat by the fire watching his chest rise and fall and wondered what she'd brought into her home. A gentleman, clearly. But gentlemen didn't end up beaten nearly to death on country roads. He was running from something, or someone, and now that someone might come looking. The second day was worse. The fever spiked so high she thought she'd lose him. His skin burned under her touch, his breathing turned ragged, and he thrashed so violently she had to hold him down. Clara stripped him again, sponged his body with cold water, whispered things she didn't mean. "It's all right. You're safe. Just hold on." She didn't know why she cared. She didn't even know his name. But the idea of him dying in her house alone, after she'd worked so hard to save him, it felt like failure, like watching her own life slip away. On the third day, the fever broke. She woke slumped in the chair beside him, her neck stiff, and found him watching her. His eyes were grey, sharp despite the pain. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Clara brought him water, held the cup to his lips. He drank like a man dying of thirst, then fell back against the pillow. "Who are you?" His voice was rough, barely a whisper. "The woman who saved your life," Clara said flatly. "Who are you?" He closed his eyes. For a moment she thought he'd passed out again. Then he spoke. "Nicholas." Just that. Nothing more. She waited, but he didn't elaborate. Fine. She didn't need his life story. "You were attacked," she said. "On the road. Do you remember?" His jaw tightened. "Yes." "By who?" "I don't know." But the way he said it told her he was lying. Or at least not telling the whole truth. Clara stood, suddenly angry. She'd risked everything to save him, her safety, her reputation, her peace, and he was going to lie to her. "Look," she said, her voice cold, "I don't care what trouble you're in. But if someone's going to come looking for you, I need to know. This is my home, my life, and I won't let you bring danger here without warning." Nicholas opened his eyes, really looked at her. She saw surprise there, maybe respect. Most women didn't speak to men like that, but Clara had learned a long time ago that softness got you nowhere. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I don't remember everything. The attack was sudden. Men in masks. They beat me, took my horse, left me for dead." He paused. "I think they meant to make it look like an accident." "Why would someone want you dead?" He didn't answer. Clara felt her frustration rising. "If you won't tell me the truth, you can leave as soon as you can walk." "I can't tell you what I don't fully remember," he said, and there was something raw in his voice. "But I think someone close to me betrayed me." The words hung in the air. Clara knew that feeling, the poison of betrayal. She'd felt it with her husband, who'd married her for her small inheritance and worked her like a servant until his heart gave out. She sat back down, her anger fading into something colder. "Then you'll stay until you're strong enough to go," she said. "But you work for your keep. I don't run a charity." For the first time, he almost smiled. Fair enough. By the end of the first week, Nicholas could stand. By the second, he could walk without falling. Clara watched him gain strength with something like relief and something like dread. Relief because keeping him alive had been exhausting. Dread because once he was strong enough, he'd leave, and she'd be alone again. Which was stupid. She barely knew him, but the house felt different with him in it. Less empty, less like a tomb. He insisted on helping despite his injuries. She found him splitting wood one morning, his movements slow but determined. She wanted to yell at him to stop, that he'd tear his stitches, but the woodpile was running low, and she was too proud to admit she needed help. So she watched from the window as he worked, his breath misting in the frozen air. His face tight with pain he refused to show. They fell into a rhythm. She cooked, he cleaned. She fed the animals, he hauled water. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who'd both learned that words were often useless. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Nicholas broke the quiet. "Why did you save me?" Clara didn't look up from the sock she was mending. "You were dying. Most people would have kept walking. Most people are cowards." He laughed at that, a short, surprised sound. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." "I'll take that as a compliment." She bit off the thread, examined her work. "What's your full name, Nicholas? You never said." The pause was too long. She looked up and found him staring into the fire, his expression unreadable. "Nicholas Ashford." Clara waited. The name meant nothing to her. "And?" Another pause. Then quietly, "Duke of Harrogate." The sock fell from her hands. She stared at him, waiting for the punchline. But he wasn't laughing. His face was serious, almost resigned. "You're lying," she said. "I'm not. A duke wouldn't be traveling alone on a country road. A duke wouldn't—" She stopped. "Wouldn't be beaten and left for dead. Wouldn't be sitting in her kitchen in borrowed clothes. Wouldn't be real." But the look on his face told her it was all true. Clara stood so fast her chair scraped. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing." Her voice was shaking. She felt like a fool. She'd been sitting here, talking to him like an equal, and all along he was— "You should have told me." "Why?" He stood too, wincing. "So you could treat me differently. Bow and scrape and call me your grace?" "I didn't want that, Clara. For the first time in my life, someone was treating me like a human being instead of a title." "Don't you dare," she hissed. "Don't you dare make this about you. You brought your world into mine without warning. What if whoever attacked you comes here? What if they find out I'm hiding a duke? Do you know what they'd do to me?" The color drained from his face. "God, I didn't think—" "No, you didn't." She turned away, her hands trembling. "You need to leave, now, tonight. Clara, get out." Her voice broke. "Just get out." She heard him move, heard the door open. Cold air rushed in, then his voice quiet and devastated. "I'm sorry." The door closed. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the fire, and tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing. But the house already felt too empty, and she knew with a sinking certainty that he wouldn't make it through the night. Not in his condition, not in this cold. She found him 2 hours later, collapsed in the snow 100 yards from the house. His skin was grey, his lips blue, his eyes half closed. Clara screamed his name, dropped to her knees, tried to lift him. He was too heavy. She dragged him, slipping in the snow, her lungs burning, until she got him back inside. This time, when she stripped his clothes, her hands were shaking with more than cold. She'd sent him to die. Out of pride and fear, she'd sent him to die. She wrapped him in blankets, built up the fire until the room was sweltering, and stayed by his side all night, checking his pulse every few minutes, terrified it would stop. He woke near dawn, disoriented and shivering. Clara held a cup of hot tea to his lips. He drank without speaking. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were full of something she couldn't name. "Why did you come after me?" Clara didn't have a good answer. "Because I'm an idiot." "Because you're decent." His hand found hers on the blanket. "I am sorry, Clara, truly. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I put you in danger, and I had no right." He paused. "My cousin, Edward. He's next in line for the dukedom. I'm almost certain he's the one who ordered the attack. Your own family. Title and power make men do terrible things." His voice was bitter. "Edward's always been ambitious, but I never thought he'd go this far. What will you do?" "I have to go back to London. Stop him before he destroys everything." He squeezed her hand. "But I need a few more days. To heal. To plan. If you'll let me stay." Clara should have said no, should have protected herself, but instead she heard herself say, "A few more days, that's all." The next 3 days felt stolen. Nicholas grew stronger. They worked side by side in a careful dance of proximity and distance. Clara felt him watching her sometimes, and she hated how aware she was of him, the way he moved, the sound of his voice, the rare moments when he smiled and his whole face changed. She was being stupid. Worse than stupid. She was being dangerous. He was a duke. She was a widow with calloused hands and no education. He'd leave and that would be that. But on the third night, something shifted. They were sitting by the fire, Clara mending, and Nicholas reading an old book he'd found on her shelf. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Without warning, Nicholas spoke. "Tell me about your husband." Clara's hands stilled. "Why?" "Because you never mention him, and I want to know." "There's nothing to know. He married me when I was 18. He was 45. He needed someone to work his farm, and I don't know what I needed. Security, maybe. It doesn't matter. He's dead. Did you love him?" The question was too direct. Clara looked up sharply. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one." "No." The word came out harder than she meant. "I didn't love him, and he didn't love me. We were two people trapped in the same cage." She set down her mending. "He died 3 years ago. Heart attack. The whole village expected me to sell the farm and move in with my sister, but I didn't. This is mine. The only thing I've ever owned that's really mine." Nicholas was quiet for a long moment. "I understand that," he said finally. "Wanting something that's yours, not inherited, not given, just yours. Do you?" She couldn't keep the skepticism out of her voice. "You were born with everything. I was born with a title I never asked for, with expectations I can never meet, with people watching every move I make, waiting for me to fail." He leaned forward. "You think I'm free because I have money and power? I'm the least free person you'll ever meet." There was something raw in his voice that made Clara's chest tighten. She saw him differently suddenly, not as a duke but as a man, a lonely man, just like her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Don't be. I'm not asking for pity." He paused. "I'm asking for, I don't know, understanding maybe." Their eyes met across the firelight. Clara felt something dangerous unfurling in her chest. She stood abruptly. "I should sleep. Long day tomorrow." "Clara." His voice stopped her at the door. When she turned, he was standing too. "Thank you for everything." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and fled to her room. But she lay awake for hours, listening to him move around the house and wondering what she was doing, what they were both doing, because something was happening between them, something neither of them had asked for, and Clara had no idea how to stop it, or if she even wanted to. The storm hit on the 4th day. Snow fell so thick, Clara couldn't see the barn from the house. They were trapped inside, the wind howling like something alive, the windows rattling in their frames. Clara tried to keep busy, cooking, cleaning, anything to avoid the growing tension. But there was nowhere to hide in the small house, nowhere to run from the way Nicholas watched her, the way her body responded every time he came too close. By evening, they were both restless. Clara stood at the window, watching the snow, feeling him behind her. Too close, Not close enough. How long do you think it'll last? She asked, just to break the silence. A day, maybe 2. His voice was right behind her. She could feel the heat of him. Clara. Don't. She didn't turn around. If she turned around, something would break. Some final barrier she'd been desperately maintaining. I can't stop thinking about you. His voice was low, rough. I know I shouldn't. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. Clara closed her eyes. You'll leave in a few days. You'll go back to London and forget all this. No. His hand touched her shoulder, gentle but insistent, turning her to face him. I won't. Nicholas, tell me you don't feel it too. His eyes searched hers, desperate. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll never speak of it again. She should lie, should protect them both. But Clara had spent her whole life lying, pretending, swallowing her truth. And suddenly, she was tired. So tired. I can't, she whispered. Something ignited in his eyes. He pulled her close and kissed her. Not gently, not carefully. Kissed her like a drowning man grabbing for air. Clara gasped against his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt, every thought disappearing except this, his lips, his hands, the desperate way he held her like she might vanish. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nicholas pressed his forehead to hers. Come with me, he said, to London. Be my wife. Reality crashed back. Clara stepped away, shaking her head. Are you insane? I've never been more serious in my life. Nicholas, I can't. We barely know each other. And even if we did, I don't belong in your world. Then I'll stay here, in yours. That's ridiculous. You have responsibilities, a title. You can't just abandon everything. Why not? His voice was almost angry. What's the point of any of it if I'm alone? Clara felt tears burning her eyes. Because I would destroy you. Your reputation, your family, everything. The scandal alone would ruin you. I don't care. Well, I do. She backed toward her room. I care about you too much to let you throw away your life for something that won't last. Clara. No. She held up a hand. You need to go back to London. Deal with your cousin, reclaim your life, and forget about me. I can't forget you. You will. She smiled sadly. Men like you always do. She closed the door before he could respond, leaned against it, her whole body shaking, and listened to the storm outside trying to tear the world apart. Inside, she felt the same way, torn, broken, and knowing that in a few days, Nicholas would leave and take whatever remained of her heart with him. A farm woman finds a duke left for dead, and their lives change forever, Part 2. Nicholas left 3 days after the storm. Clara woke to find him dressed in the cleaned and mended clothes he'd arrived in, his few belongings packed. He stood in the kitchen looking lost, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Clara made tea with shaking hands, keeping her back to him, because if she looked at him, she'd break. I'll send money, he said quietly, for everything you did. Don't. Her voice was sharp. I don't want your money. Clara, just go. She turned finally, forcing herself to meet his eyes. Go back to your life. Fix whatever's broken. And be happy. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulled her into his arms. Clara let herself have it just for a moment, the feeling of being held, of being wanted. Then she stepped back. Goodbye, Nicholas. He looked like she'd struck him, but he nodded, picked up his bag and walked out the door. Clara watched from the window as he disappeared down the road, and only when he was completely gone did she let herself cry. The house felt like a grave. Clara threw herself into work, exhausting herself so completely that she'd collapse into bed too tired to think. But Nicholas haunted every corner. The chair where he sat, the wood he'd chopped, still stacked neatly by the door, the pillow that still smelled like him. She should wash it, burn it, forget he ever existed. But she couldn't. The village gossip started within days. People had seen a man at her house. Whispers turned into rumors. Clara ignored them all, head high, refusing to explain herself. But the judgment wore on her. The way women crossed the street to avoid her. The way men looked at her with speculation. She'd broken an unspoken rule, a widow living with a strange man. It didn't matter that she'd saved his life, that nothing improper had happened. Actually, that was a lie. The kiss had been very improper, the way she still thought about it at night, even more so. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Clara tried to return to normal, but normal felt impossible. Everything reminded her of him: the empty chair, the silent evenings, the hollow ache in her chest that wouldn't fade. She was feeding the chickens one afternoon when she heard horses. 3 riders, rough-looking men in dark coats. They didn't dismount politely. They surrounded her, their horses snorting and stamping. "You, Clara Whitmore?" The leader was a big man with cold eyes and a scar across his jaw. "Who's asking?" "We're asking." He leaned down from his saddle. "We hear you had a guest recently, stayed here a few weeks." Clara's heart hammered, but she kept her face blank. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't lie to us, woman. We know he was here. The Duke." So Nicholas had been right. Someone had come looking. "I don't know any Duke," Clara said flatly. "Now, get off my property." The man laughed, ugly and cold. "You got spirit. I'll give you that. But here's how this works. If you're going to leave, pack whatever you can carry and go. This land is being claimed. Like hell it is. This is my land. I have the deed. Papers can be lost. Accidents happen." His smile made her blood run cold. "Especially to women living alone. You understand?" Clara understood perfectly. This was Edward's doing, Nicholas's cousin, trying to erase any connection to his crime. She was a loose end, a witness, and they were here to tie her up. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. The man's smile vanished. "You've got until tomorrow night. After that," he shrugged. "Well, lots of things can happen to a farm. Fires, mostly. Shame when they spread to the house." They rode off, leaving Clara standing alone in the yard, her hands clenched into fists. She wasn't afraid, not yet. Fear would come later. Right now, she was just angry, furious. She'd survived a brutal marriage, 3 years of backbreaking work, and the judgment of an entire village. She wasn't about to be run off her own land by some thugs. But as darkness fell, and she sat alone in the house, the anger faded, and the fear crept in. She had no one to help her, no family close enough, no friends she could trust. Nicholas was in London, probably fighting his own battles, unaware that his cousin had sent men after her. Clara loaded the old shotgun her husband had left behind, checked the windows, and tried not to think about what burning to death would feel like. The second day was worse because nothing happened. Clara worked through her chores in a daze, constantly watching the road, jumping at every sound. The men didn't return, but their threat hung over everything. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. By evening, she was shaking with exhaustion and fear. She barricaded the door, sat by the window with the shotgun across her lap and waited. The horses came at midnight. Clara heard them before she saw them, multiple riders moving fast. Her hands tightened on the gun. This was it. They were coming to make good on their threat. She stood, moved to the door, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. The door burst open. She'd forgotten to lock it in her panic, and Clara raised the shotgun, her finger on the trigger. A man stepped through, tall and commanding, and for a second she almost fired. Then the firelight hit his face. Nicholas. The gun fell from her hands. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what she was seeing. He was here. He'd come back. Clara. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled her into his arms. She felt him shaking, or maybe that was her. "Thank God. I thought I'd be too late. How did you... What are you..." "Edward sent men." His voice was rough, urgent. "I found out 2 days ago. I rode straight through. Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" "No, they threatened me. Told me to leave or they'd burn the house." She pulled back to look at him, still not quite believing he was real. "Nicholas, what are you doing here? What do you think I'm doing?" His hands framed her face. "I'm not letting you face this alone." "But your cousin, London..." "Handled. Edward's in custody. The evidence was overwhelming." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But when I found out he'd sent men here after you..." His voice broke. "I couldn't lose you, Clara. I won't lose you." She was crying now, couldn't help it. "I told you to forget me. Impossible." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I tried. God knows I tried. But every day without you was torture. I kept thinking about what you said, that you'd destroy me. But you're wrong. You're the only thing that makes me feel alive." Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to so badly it hurt. "But the men, they'll come back. Let them." Nicholas's smile was dangerous. "I brought reinforcements." For the first time, Clara noticed the other men outside, 6 of them, armed and alert. Nicholas's people, protection, safety. She sagged against him. all the fear and tension finally releasing. "I can't believe you came back," she whispered. "I'll always come back." He pulled her closer. "Now where's your bedroom? Because we're not leaving this house until I know you're completely safe." Clara almost laughed. Despite everything, the danger, the fear, the impossible situation, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Nicholas was here, and maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The men returned at dawn. Clara woke to shouting, the sound of horses, and Nicholas's arm around her waist pulling her back. "Stay here," he ordered, already moving toward the door. Clara ignored him, grabbing the shotgun and following. She wasn't hiding while he fought her battles. Outside, the 3 men from yesterday had returned, but they'd brought friends, 8 of them now, rough and armed. They pulled up short when they saw Nicholas standing on Clara's porch, flanked by his own men. The scarred leader's face went pale. "Your Grace, we weren't told—" "No, I imagine Edward didn't mention I was still alive." Nicholas's voice could have cut glass. "That would have complicated his plans, wouldn't it? We were just following orders. Orders to terrorize a defenseless woman. To threaten arson and murder." Nicholas stepped forward. "Do you know what happens to men who threaten what's mine?" The silence was absolute. Clara felt a thrill run through her at his words. "What's mine? We didn't know she was—" "Leave." Nicholas's voice dropped to something deadly. "Before I decide that mercy is too generous. And tell anyone else Edward sent that if they come within a mile of this property, they'll answer to me personally. Understood?" The men fled, literally turned their horses and ran. Clara watched them disappear, then looked at Nicholas, who was breathing hard, his jaw tight. "That was," she started, "necessary." He turned to her. "Are you angry? For protecting me? For calling me yours?" Clara smiled slowly. "Not even a little." Something flashed in his eyes. He pulled her inside, slammed the door, and kissed her hard enough to steal her breath. When they broke apart, both breathing heavy, he spoke against her lips. "Marry me. You already asked. And you said no. I'm asking again." His hands slid into her hair. "Marry me, Clara. Not because it's practical. Not because it makes sense, but because I love you. Because these past 3 weeks without you have been hell. Because I'd rather face scandal with you than spend another day in that empty life pretending I'm happy." Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Your reputation will survive, and if it doesn't, I don't care." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm not asking you to fit into my world. I'm asking you to let me fit into yours. We'll split our time between London and here. We'll face the gossip together. And anyone who has a problem with it can go to hell." Clara laughed through her tears. "That's very unducal of you." "Good. I'm tired of being a duke. I want to be a man. Your man." He pulled back to look at her. "So what do you say? Will you marry me?" She should think about it. Should consider all the reasons it was impossible. But Clara was tired of being careful. Tired of protecting herself from hurt. Nicholas had come back. He'd chosen her. And she was done running from the only good thing life had ever offered her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." They married 3 weeks later in the small village church. Clara wore a simple dress she made herself, cream wool with lace at the collar. No jewels, no fancy anything. Just her and Nicholas in a plain black suit, and the handful of village people who'd forgiven her enough to attend. It was nothing like a duke's wedding should be. No cathedral, no hundreds of guests, no ceremony, just 2 people making promises they intended to keep. The scandal in London was exactly as bad as Clara had feared. The papers had a field day. Duke weds peasant widow. Society shocked as Harrogate marries common woman. The cartoons were vicious. Clara read them all, each one a tiny cut, but Nicholas burned them without looking and told her they didn't matter. His friends, the few he trusted, came to meet her. Some were polite and cold, others were genuinely warm. Clara learned to tell the difference quickly. The first society ball nearly broke her. Nicholas insisted she attend, insisted on presenting her properly. Clara wore a dress that cost more than her farm, emerald silk that made her feel like a fraud. Every woman stared. Every whisper followed her. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But then Nicholas took her hand, squeezed gently, and she remembered why she was doing this. Not for them, for him. A woman approached. Countess something. Clara didn't catch the name and smiled with false sweetness. How quaint. You must tell me, Mrs. Oh, forgive me, Duchess. However, did you manage to ensnare a duke? Such a Cinderella story. The ballroom went quiet, everyone watching, waiting for her to crumble. Clara felt the old rage rising, the same rage she'd felt when her husband belittled her, when the village women judged her, when the world told her she wasn't enough. But this time she didn't swallow it. She looked the Countess dead in the eye. I saved his life, Clara said calmly. Not with jewels or parties or games, with my own 2 hands. I fed him, healed him, and asked nothing in return, and when he asked me to marry him I said yes, not because of his title, but because he's a good man who sees me as an equal. She paused. Can you say the same about your marriage, my lady? The Countess flushed red. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then someone else. Nicholas was grinning beside her, his hand tightening on hers. The Countess fled, and just like that, the ice broke. Women began approaching Clara, not all of them, but enough. Genuine smiles, real conversation. She'd won something. Not acceptance maybe, but respect. Later, Nicholas pulled her into a quiet corner, his eyes blazing with pride. That was magnificent. I probably just made us more enemies. Let them be enemies. You were honest. That's more than anyone in this room can say. He kissed her deep and slow, not caring who saw. I'm so proud of you. Clara smiled against his lips. Take me home. London home or Yorkshire home? Yorkshire, always Yorkshire. She pulled back to look at him. I need to remember who I am, and you need to remember why you married me. I could never forget. But he understood. They left that night, rode through the darkness back to the little farm where everything had started. And when they arrived at dawn, Clara stepped into the small kitchen and felt like she could finally breathe again. 2 years passed like a dream. Clara and Nicholas split their time between London and Yorkshire, and slowly, impossibly, it worked. Clara never fully fit into society. She was too blunt, too honest, too comfortable with work and simplicity. But she found her place. She advocated for widows' rights, for rural workers, for the people society ignored. Nicholas supported her completely, using his position to push legislation she drafted in their Yorkshire kitchen. They fought sometimes, loud, passionate arguments about everything from politics to what colour to paint the parlour. But they always made up, usually in bed, and Clara learned that fighting didn't mean the end. It just meant they cared enough to be honest. She got pregnant in their 2nd year. A girl, born in the Yorkshire house with a local midwife and Nicholas holding her hand through every contraction. They named her Rose, and when Clara held her for the first time, she cried with a joy so complete it hurt. This was her family, her real family. Not by blood or obligation, but by choice. The scandal never fully died. There were always whispers, always judgment. But Clara stopped caring. Let them whisper. She had everything that mattered. One evening, 3 years after that terrible day on the road, Clara stood at the window of their Yorkshire house, watching Nicholas play with Rose in the garden. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Rose shrieked with laughter as Nicholas lifted her high, and Clara felt her heart swell so much she thought it might burst. She thought about the woman she'd been, alone, bitter, convinced she'd never be loved. That woman felt like a stranger now. Clara had learned that love wasn't about convenience or practicality. It wasn't about fitting perfectly into someone's life. It was about choosing each other every day through scandal and judgment and fear. It was about being brave enough to say yes when the world screamed no. Nicholas looked up, caught her watching and smiled. That smile still made her breath catch. He'd given up so much for her, reputation, ease, the approval of his peers, but he'd gained something too. Freedom, truth, a partner who loved him for who he was, not what he represented. Clara opened the window. Dinner's ready. Race you inside, Rosie. Nicholas laughed, scooping up their daughter and running toward the house. Clara met them at the door, and when Nicholas kissed her, brief and sweet and familiar, she tasted happiness. Real, earned, imperfect happiness. That night, after Rose was asleep, they sat by the fire like they had that first winter. Nicholas pulled Clara close, her back against his chest, his arms around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. Saying yes, dealing with all the gossip? Clara thought about it honestly. "Sometimes," she admitted. when the judgment gets heavy, when I hear what they say about me." She turned to look at him, but then I remember what the alternative was. A life alone, a life without this. She touched his face. "And I know I'd choose you 1,000 times over." Nicholas kissed her palm. "I found you dying on a road," he said, "but you're the one who saved me, Clara. You gave me a reason to live beyond duty and expectation. You gave me love." "We saved each other," Clara corrected. "That's how it works." Outside, the wind rustled through the fields Clara had worked for years. Inside, the fire crackled, warm and steady. And upstairs, their daughter slept peacefully, safe in a world built on courage and choice. Clara closed her eyes, breathed in the scent of home, and knew that sometimes, just sometimes, the impossible becomes possible. All it takes is someone brave enough to drag a dying duke off a frozen road, and two hearts willing to fight for something real. Because in the end, titles don't matter. Reputation doesn't matter. What matters is finding someone who sees you, truly sees you, and loves you anyway. Clara Whitmore, Duchess of Harrogate, had found that. Against all odds, through scandal and judgment and fear, she'd found it, and she'd never let it go.